לב טהור, ברא לי אלוהים, ורוח נכון, חדש בקרבי. I am Father Agapetos. Learn how Jesus prayed the Psalms.
Dwelling you water, the hills are drinking fill of your gift.
So, good evening. We're back together on this adventure in the second group of the second book of the Psalm, which starts with Psalm 52 and goes to 64. Tonight we're going to see Psalm 62. In other words, we're getting towards the end. And I'd like to emphasize that all these Psalms is a unity about them. That there's this very strong presence of hostility, and yet these different forms of bringing forth and letting the victory of God be manifest and take over in my interior life. And so let us go directly to Psalm 62, and let me show you the Psalm. And I'd like to first give you the title, the Psalm on what I emphasize. Why do I say that? Because when I pray the Psalms in Hebrew, this Psalm stands out so easily because there's this little expression, which in Hebrew is ach, which appears 6 times in this Psalm. And I think really the best translation is I emphasize. It's a little shout which happens not so often in the Psalter, 24 times in the Psalter, but it's one which rhythms and structures a psalm. And so let's just zoom down on the psalm to see it a little close. And what you see with the red, you see 6 times red and 6 times I emphasize. And basically, if you look at the colors of the psalm, we have the first part, which is red and pink, and this is my experience. And then the middle part, green and yellow, is what I share to others. And then I come back with a conclusion on my experience, summing up my experience. So let's go immediately to the superscription, which we have in this psalm. Let's listen to it first.
למנצח על ידותון, מזמור לדוד.
Okay, so you heard David at the end. It's a psalm of David, right? And it's exactly the same headline as Psalm 31 and a superscription. So it's the second time we find them psalted that way. And this time I took my Hebrew master, Rabbi Hirsch, what he says is translation. To him who grants us fortitude that masters victoriously tasks set by providence for our souls. Psalm of David. So, to him who grants us fortitude, but fortitude where by which we master what is set for our souls by divine providence. And so this is, I emphasize precisely that, what does this mastering of what divine providence wants of my soul is about? And we could say that that's a little bit what the psalm is all about. And, and so let's listen to the beginning of the psalm, and I'm going to play it to you in Hebrew, and both verse 2 and verse 3, so that you hear this I emphasize twice, which is in Hebrew, ach.
אך אל אלוהים דומיה נפשי, ממנו ישועתי. אך הוא צורי וישועתי, משגבי, לא אמות רבה.
Okay, so this is verse 2 and 3. So, ach, we have it 6 times, and which rhythms the psalm and structures it. So this, in fact, this verse 2 and 3 is going to be echoed in verse 6 and 7, but with changes. But we're going to have the two ach in verse 6 and 7. So what do I emphasize in the tasks given to me by divine providence, right? And so the first thing is, in Hebrew, El Elohim Dumia Nafshi. Nafshi is soul, right? So I emphasize, so El Elohim turned toward Elohim, and my soul, Dumia is a noun, right? There's my, literally, if I translate it word by word, turn towards Elohim, awaiting in silence my soul. My soul is in the form of awaiting in silence. And isn't that a beautiful response to what divine providence asks of me, right? That my soul be this waiting in silence. And that is where I am best at the task that God is giving me. And so this is very close to what Psalm 39, that has the same superscription, says. And we can read it in the right column. So I am mute, awaiting in silence. I quiet even good thoughts, but my pain stirs up. In my interior, my heart grows hot. As I meditate, fire is kindled. It's a waiting in silence that is also one in which I find myself in the midst of the great battle. And but where I work, Psalm 39 says, on quieting even good thoughts. This is basically what the time of silent prayer of a monk is all about. That my soul be in the form of a waiting in silence. And so we have this very strong expression, and it reminds me of a very strong expression at the very end of Psalm 46, which you have in your right column, and which literally is fall flat. Often it's translated, be silent and know that I am God. But it's really fall flat in front of the transcendence of who I am and know that I am God. And so there's this idea of adoration behind being in silence. So from him is my salvation. And then there's a second I emphasize, right? I emphasize that it is he who is my rock and my salvation. So my rock, we can, if we look at always for words in the Bible, their meaning is rooted in their first appearances in the Bible. And in the Pentateuch, at the end of the Pentateuch, in Deuteronomy chapter 32, we have in the hymn, right? O rock, his work is perfect. Right? It's the way God who made miraculously water run from the rock and who led Moses on the very top of the Sinai, on a rock. And, O rock, his work is perfect. Truly all his ways are justice, El of faithfulness, and without iniquity, just and right is he. It's one in whom. So behind this Deuteronomy citation, rock is linked with trust, right? And we're going to find that in this psalm and already here in the expressions. So it is he who is my rock and my salvation, my high tower. And so we have twice my salvation, and we're going to find a variation of this word. Here in Hebrew, it's Yeshuati, which we find twice. And you could say it's the one who possesses my salvation. Right? He is the one in whom my salvation is a possession, is cared for, is taken completely into responsibility. Right? That's the idea of salvation here. He is my totally responsible Savior, my high tower. So here in Mis Gabi, so we had Migdal in the preceding psalm, and there's different names for towers which resonate with each other. But this one is a new name, and maybe to emphasize more this with Miss Gabi, it's I think already in the past it was a strong tower, but there's an idea of right, strong, powerful tower. He is my high tower. I shall not be greatly swayed. So that's interesting, this lesson. And literally, it's, I shall not be swayed, and greatly in in multiply, right? In other words, God's providence allows me to be swayed. There's swayed, and there's, we could say, a wind blowing that's like blowing on the trees, that's blowing on me. And as long as we're on this earth, we are swaying creatures. But with my rock and my salvation, right, I am not greatly swayed. Okay. Then we get into the second moment of the first part of the psalm, where I look at what is swaying me, right? And what is bringing, as I said, in all these psalms, there's a very present hostility around, which is described by different actions. And here again, we have actions in verse 4. Let us go through it bit by bit.
עד אנה תהותתו על איש.
Okay. Ad ana, until when? So this reminds us of Psalm 13. At the beginning of our Psalter, we have 4 times, Adana, Adana, Adana. And I just gave here the quote of what's written right after the 4th time, shall my enemy be exalted over me, right? So this, until when will I be swayed, overly swayed, right? Or in danger of being overly swayed. Until when? And until when will you seek to shatter a man? So here we have te hutitu. This word is unique, shatter, in the whole Bible. There's only one other passage which is a close word, but not exactly the same, but almost the same, tachteni, in Job, which you have here in Job 7, verse 14. You shatter me with dreams. And so if you look at the roots behind it, it's a radical, right? Until when will you seek to shatter my being, we could say, my being a man? And so this a man in Hebrew, ish, is going to appear 3 times in this psalm, which is not Adam, which we have at the beginning of Genesis chapter 1. God made, and the beginning of chapter 2, with God made Adam from clay and breathed into him. But in chapter 2, as you can read in the right, we have God saying to Adam, up to now he's always Adam, she, the one coming from your womb, shall be called woman. So in Hebrew, it's Isha, because she was taken out of you, who are man, Ish. And so we could say man here is this, is more than Adam. It's Adam who has received a companion, Adam who has a dignity. We're going to see right away the word dignity coming. That and I am, until when we shatter to the very being, right? A man, all of you. So did we listen to it? Let me just show. Oh yes, yes, yeah. All of you, you threaten to murder the one who is leaning wall, as if his fence is already thrust down. So that's what we have here. You threaten to murder. It's a very strong word in Hebrew, and which and then there's this very special group of words, kikir natui, gader adhuya. So you can say, as a leaning wall, a fence thrust down. And putting them together in this context, right? I think the best is what I wrote here. You threaten to murder the one who is a leaning wall, as if his fence is already thrust down. In other words, as if he is completely already open to the threat of murder, and where there's no obstacle to. So we see this both with shattering and threat of murder, and where the fence is thrust down. Until when is the attack to the very being of the man whom you created with dignity. And this is going to be emphasized in verse 5.
הדחויה.
Okay, here we have now the verse 5.
אך משאתו יעצו להדיח, ירצו חזב, בפיו יברכו, ובקרבם יקללו, סלע.
Okay, so it starts with ach. I hope you heard it, right? So, in other words, there's two I emphasized before. I emphasize that this Elohim's protection and intimacy with him, right? But I also emphasize this hostility, which is so deeply threatening, as verse 4 expresses it, and disregarding dignity. And this word dignity, it's the only time that this word se'itu appears in the Psalter. And it only appears 7 other times in the Bible, and so it's not the normal word for dignity, but it's we could see we're at this radical danger in which I am, and it's disregarding this dignity where my being is in jeopardy. And they plot to ruin me. They take pleasure in deceit. With their mouths they bless, and within they curse. Selah. So we'll get to Selah right away, but this within, and in Hebrew it's a very expressive word. It's kirbam, and it expresses the viscera. It's not the heart, right? It's this passionate dynamic with which they curse, and so here we have all these actions which characterize the deep hostility that is upon me. And I emphasize that is really what is happening. And it's precisely opposing what true blessing is. It's opposing what life of the heart is, right? It's one which is purely this passionate dynamic against me, but which goes deep into my ruin, into the shattering my being. And so Selah, a time to let this reality quietly penetrate me, that the swaying which we had in verse 3 is truly one which is a real threat. But you see what's so beautiful in these Psalms is that we start with trust, confidence, and strength, fortitude, right? Says the superscription, right? And union with God's designs. But we are completely awake and recognizing the threat under which we are. This characterizes this whole group of Psalms and is here re-emphasized. But then we have the conclusion of this first part about myself, verse 6 to 8, where we are very close to the same words as verse 2 and verse 3, and yet they are slightly different. And in my translations, I really tried to emphasize the differences that are in between verse 6 and 7 with respect to 2 and 3. But let's listen to verse 6 and 7 with the two ach.
אך לאלוהים דומי נפשי, כי ממנו תקוותי. אך הוא צורי וישועתי, משגבי לא אמות.
Okay, so I emphasize Oma. So here, instead of Dumiya, on top it's El Elohim Dumiya Nafshi. Here it's Le Elohim Domi Nafshi. So it's almost the same words, but slight. So the great difference is Domi is the verb, whereas in verse 2, Dumiya is the noun. And it's the verb in imperative. Oh, my soul, wait in silence for Elohim. I'm giving a command to my soul. In other words, now I'm working through what divine providence has set for me. And this is confirmed by what comes right after. Truly, ki, from his proximity comes my hope. And literally, in the Hebrews, ki mimenu tikvati. Truly, from him, my hope. But this mimenu is an expression which is very strong. So I translate from his proximity. It's under his shadow, right? Comes my hope. So we didn't have this. We just have above. We just had from him comes my salvation. But from his proximity comes my hope. And so it's a step forward that of my engagement into God's providential work with respect to verse 2. I am entering in full work with it and with this effort, engagement to silence of my soul, and this opening up my capacity of hope. And then this verse 7 is almost the same as verse 3. I emphasize he's my rock and my salvation. In other words, God really possesses my salvation, my high tower, but here it's, I shall not stumble, instead of, I shall not be greatly swayed, right? And so I shall not stumble because now I'm walking. I'm walking forward. I'm making steps myself in this life of silence. I find this very beautiful. And then we have verse 8. Let's listen to it.
על אלוהים ישעי וכבודי, צור עוזי, מחסי באלוהים.
Okay, so upon Elohim, it's still lies. So here it's Ishi instead of Yeshuati. So Yeshuati. So this is where we had verse 2 and verse 7, as you see in the right column. We have Yeshuati, which highlights personal ownership of that salvation. You are my salvation. You give me personal ownership of salvation. Whereas Ishi, you hear it's a diminutive, but it has exactly the same root and basically the same meaning, but it's why is it a diminutive? Because it's sort of my digesting this gift of salvation, right? So it's the reception of my salvation. The salvific deliverance or help that is received. So as I walk forward, as I hope, uh, as I engage in waiting in silence, I'm receiving my salvation and my glory. And so there's this beautiful little difference, shade in meanings, right? And at the top in verse 2 and 3, we have this proclamation of God's unique role. But then here, it's my task in joining with God's gifts and the role he has for me. And it ends with what is suggested by Rabbi Hirsch, is it 3 words which are really 1 word altogether, right? My rock, strength, refuge is in Elohim, right? I gather together, right? This is the idea of rock, strength, refuge in Elohim. In other words, as I'm going forward in my task of entering more deeply in communion with God, right? I'm entering also in a fuller communion with God in his attributes, right? Rock, strength, refuge. So this thus finishes the first part of the psalm, which is in 3 parts. So there was a wishing to have quiet trust in my God of salvation, and then the enemy's perversity inflicted on me, and then this quiet trust in God thanks to insightful receptivity on my side. So that sums up my position, right? And with this recognition of how threatening the hostility is, the acts of hostility are towards me. So, but with that, I can pass over to the second part of the psalm, which is what I'm ready to share my situation and my engagement to others, to engage them, to live what I have engaged in. So let's listen to verse 9.
ביטחו בו בכל עת עם, שפכו לפניו לבבכם, אלוהים מחסה לנו. סלע.
Okay, so trust in him at all times. So in Hebrew, it's bikol et, and it is moment after moment. And now in the future, you also engage yourself in this walking forward in trust. And people, right? I really look towards the community, a call for the community to receive God as rock and salvation. And here I'm not with what is the viscera, but the heart. Pour out your hearts before him. There it's this going forward is one where all the energy and strength of your heart, you engage, you lose yourself in the engagement of your heart to wait in silence for God. Right? Elohim is a refuge for us, Selah. So keep this, all peoples, right? And be quiet to receive this, right? This continuous welcome of the God of salvation by your active trust, moment after moment. And here we have a new I emphasize. So let's listen to it in Hebrew.
אך הבל בני אדם.
Okay. Ach Hevel bnei Adam. Huh? The sons of Adam. Hevel. It's vapor, or it's what other word do I have? It's just air, a breath of air, right? And in comparison to Elohim, who is refuge for us, right? Elohim, who is my rock, strength, and refuge. Adam is just vapor or air. And then we have the next little sentence.
עזב בני איש.
So, deceit, the sons of men. And so here we have Ish again. Those who receive more dignity, right? It's deceit. They are deceit. And this balance of sons of Adam and sons of men is something which we're going to find again in Psalm 49 at the beginning, where it says, "Give ear, all inhabitants of the world, both sons of Adam and sons of men." Adam, Ish. Bnei Adam, Bnei Ish. Rich and poor together. And so it's sort of, it's humanity in all its facets, right? And then there's an emphasis on a very, there's a lot of expressions in this psalm that are quite unique and which are not repeated elsewhere. And that's what we have at the end of verse 10.
מאזניים לעלות, המה מהבל יחד.
On the scales, if they are lifted up, they will be lighter than vapor altogether. Yahad is the verse. Yeah. What an image it is. The psalm has such audacity to put all humanity on the scales and being lighter than a breath of air and seeing deceit. So this is, I emphasize, whether it's in the spiritual battle, we have one ally, and it's God. And we must trust in Him alone. And this is what, trust in Him alone, this is what I emphasize. Because any other trust, which can be one where basically it's in your humanity that you trust, is nothing in comparison to the trust that we can give to God. This reminds me of our situation as Christians, right? And where we are on the path of divinization, of resurrection. And it's any other trust but in God for resurrection. It's just vapor or a breath of air. And this is what the psalmist is, this is where we are at, right? And where we have this, it's this very beautiful psalm which emphasizes a lot silence, but also the transcendence of God. And he's going to spell it out in verse 11. So let's listen, at least to the first part of verse 11.
אל תבטחו בעושק, ובגזל אל תהבלו.
Okay, so let's do not trust in extortion and in robbery. So we have trust in God, right? But don't trust in extortion and robbery, and nor in. So here we heard tehu. Wait, no, tehebalu. Tehebalu is the same root as hevel, vapor. Vapor, and what is vapor here? Listen to the next word. Vapor is hayil. It's efficiency. Efficiency, in other words, human efficiency is just vapor. It leads to nothing with respect to the true trust we need in God. And then there's ki
אל תשיתו לב.
nuv, truly on success, set not your heart. I find this such a pertinent passage because in today's society, we hear how important success is. And here, this it's again a very rare word, which is only twice in the Psalms, right? It's on success, so it's where are we? Yanuv, huh? On success, right? So, to be set on success, right? Be it not very hard, right? Don't set your heart on it. So this is really this whole second part is stressing the transcendence of God and the vanity of what human ambitions are. So this allows us to go to the conclusion of the psalm. And so it's verse 12. And let us listen to verse 12.
אחת דיבר אלוהים, שתיים זו שמעתי.
Okay. Ahat, one thing. Elohim, Elohim diber, huh? Is the word, right, of Elohim. Right? And two do I hear. And so here this is summing up the whole psalm, right? Which started with, my soul is to be awaiting in silence. And That's the one thing, right, that God is speaking to me about. But it has this double feature, right? And in fact, it's a rather rich double feature, at least in the first one, right? So the first of this double feature, let's listen to it in Hebrew.
כי עוז לאלוהים, ולך אדוני חסד.
Okay, so truly power belongs to Elohim, and to you, my Adonai, is covenant love. So it has a double facet, right? And two names of God. One is Elohim, right? The God of creation, the God of transcendence, right? And my Adonai, it's the God whom I serve. And so power belongs to the transcendent God, and it's complemented by you whom I serve, you God whom I serve, uh, who is covenant love. And so here we have this very important word, chesed, in Hebrew, covenant love, which is seen as, what is God's covenant love? It's an invitation for us to serve. And we can think of Jesus, finally, his love for us, right, is one where learn to serve as I serve. Be a servant of all. And God's love is introducing into his love world, but also into the world of serving him and serving others. So this is the fruit of this waiting in silence for God. It's being really in communion with God who has power and God who gives all so that I serve him in love, inside his unique love. But then there's the very last line of the psalm. Let's listen to it.
כי אתה תשלם לאיש כמעשה.
Okay. Truly, you render to ish, to man whom you have elevated to dignity, right? According to his deeds. And in other words, God, two things I hear is also God wants man to fully develop his free will and to act, to be recompensed according to his free will, according to his deeds, in which he engages. And so we have this tension of, on one hand, recognizing God as my salvation, as my, where we have above, right? We had my rock strength refuge, and the loving one who is teaching me to serve. On the other hand, right, this entrusting me to go forward with hope into his salvation, right? And according to perform the deeds of salvation. This idea of repaying according to our deeds is common in Psalms. So we have in Psalm 28, you see, repay them according to their work, according to the evil of their deeds. So here it's looking at those who are hostile, that they be punished. And then we have also in Psalm 94 and Psalm 137 about the same thing, right? This repay that God render to man according to his deeds. So here we've been able to go through this this beautiful psalm and see again how we have what the emphasis of the psalmist is. It's the psalm of the emphasis of the psalmist. That's the way I would. And so, do we enter into the same emphasis as him? Okay, so I think here I've shared to you just with respect to the complementarity of this psalm, right? With respect to the God of my salvation, there's this description of the acts of hostility, of really threatening to the very core of my being by hostility. Right? But when the psalm goes to the same trust to which the community is to engage, what I emphasize is how frail man is, and that we need to respect that there's only one transcendent salvation, and everything else is extortion or robbery or illusionary efficiency. So one reason why this has always been a chosen psalm of mine is because I've chosen a life of silence, of waiting in silence. There's this emphasis, but what a rich waiting in silence this is. Okay, here I am having looked through this psalm. I don't know if any of you would wish to comment or would have a question. It's really, as I just said, it's one where when you read through the Psalter, I can't help for really making a special stop at this Psalm 62. It's one which speaks deeply to my heart. Okay, so I'm sure. And what's emphasized here is extremely acute truths. And so do I accept that that's the way God teaches me? That's what God gives me. And do I want to enter into it? Okay, well, maybe we'll close a little earlier tonight because
Father,
yes.
are there other Psalms where it speaks of this silence, or is this the primary one that you go to?
Yes. Well, yes. Let me thank you for your question. Right, and so let's go to so what I shared here in, let me get, if we go to verse, wait, the second time that we have wait in silence. Oh yes, let me say a little more. So we have, if you look on the right, we have the noun, a waiting in silence, which exists only 4 times in the Bible, and they are all in the Psalms.
Mm.
So here in Psalms 39 again, right? I am mute, a waiting silence, I quiet even good thoughts. Right?
I quiet even good thoughts.
But then we have the verb to wait in silence, which is again 4 times in the Psalter. And there's 4 plus 4, 8 times, either the word or the verb. And there, for example, in Psalm 37, we have wait in silence before the Lord and labor patiently before him. This is a psalm which is a long meditation, Psalm 37, where but this verse says a lot about what this psalm is. It's a peaceful meditation, and enter into the the peace of God, enter into his resting place, right? And the psalm goes over and do not let yourself be taken off by the hostility around. So Psalm 37 is a beautiful psalm. Psalm 132 is again one of the great psalms of silence of the whole Psalter. I've calmed and silenced my soul. I think that's the most usual translation, but here I translated to be more, because it's exactly the same verb. I have calmed and made wait and silence my soul. My soul, so as a child at the breast of his mother, right? So is my soul, so is my soul. And so there's this, Psalms 132 is also one of the great psalms of waiting in silence. So there's not that many psalms in Psalter that really echo this, but there are psalms which are favorites of monks.
Yes.
And so I really, yes, I would really encourage you and engage you to have those Psalm 37, Psalm 62, Psalm 132 already at least have them in reference in your understanding of the Psalter. They are there to help us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other question? Thank you. It helps so much. The question, I wanted to say that, but I forgot it. And your questions help me to say what I omit.
Hey, Father,
Yes,
on the verse 4,
yes,
you emphasize that the threat is to the depth of the dignity of my being.
yes.
And I was wondering, in that threat, is that the fruit of waiting in silence, or is that because you were not waiting in silence? And once you receive the invitation to wait in silence, then you're able to step forward in the silence with him.
It's also how much we need the silence in order to handle what's in front of us.
Well, no, I think what you say is very beautiful. And let me put it this way. When you wait in silence, you start entering into the level of your being and no more of your doing. And so you become aware also of hostility, which is at that level. Otherwise, when you're always in doing, you're only looking at the this hostility, which is one of action, which transforming action. And I think, yes, silence brings us into a receptivity, and precisely verse 6 and 7, they have this little little change of meaning to be more in receptivity, and it's we are here in this psalm at the level of what happens when we become persons of silence. And I think it's very pertinent, therefore, what you say. And it's in this realm of silence that we can really put the world ambitions of success at their proper place, which is that they're completely at another level than what God can do. And so, yes,
Thank you.
I think we have in this psalm something of the inner battle, which is proper to those who have chosen a life of silence.
And Father, it would seem that silence is the covenant love in verse 12.
Right. It's beautiful that he concludes, right?
Yeah.
It's linked at the very end. Power belongs to Elohim, and to you, my Adonai, is covenant love. To you, with respect to whom I engage myself as a servant, right? There I meet your covenant love. And otherwise, it's sort of an abstract covenant love that I am that's revealed to me in the Bible. Right here, we're entering into this really intimate encounter with covenant love. Okay. So maybe it's past 8 now. But thank you for your questions. They're very helpful, as you see. And so let me give you a blessing with maybe I'll take the verse 6 and 7 for the final blessing. I emphasize, O my soul, wait in silence for Elohim. Truly, from his proximity comes my hope. I emphasize, he is my rock and my salvation, my high tower. I shall not stumble. Upon Elohim lies the reception of my salvation and my glory. My rock strength refuge is in Elohim, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Okay. God bless you all.